in fun. That's what's coming up on The Art of Bombing, episode 181.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. Dan Bublitz Jr. here with you. It is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. Wow. December's almost over. It's halfway over, I should say. That means Christmas is creeping right around the corner. Have you done your holiday shopping? Have you got all your gifts that you need to get? Did you think about you, though, when you were doing your shopping? I know that sounds selfish, but you know, who better to get a gift than you for yourself, because you know exactly what you want. You know, you don't have to worry about getting those Christmas gifts that you don't want. And I got a Christmas gift for you. How about treat yourself with some cool Art of Bombing swag? You can get a cool t-shirt, you can get some stickers, you know, all that fun stuff. You can get that on the website artofbombingpod.com/shop. There's all kinds of cool merchandise that you can get. You know, like I said, there's t-shirts, there's stickers, you can get mugs, you name it, you can get it. Well, I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot of cool different options. There's tote bags and things like that. You know, wall tapestries, all kinds of different things that you can get with the cool Art of Bombing logo. I also added some other designs to the store. I brought back the Bomb Squad shirt with the new logo, and there's the I'm not homeless, I'm a comedian shirt. So lots of fun stuff that you can get yourself. So just go to the website artofbombingpod.com/shop, and while you're at the website, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, you know, and maybe leave a 5-star review and some nice words. I would appreciate that. Yeah. So, like I said, it is Tuesday, December 15th, and that means the Electoral College has done their voting, and President Joe Biden is the president-elect. I should say President-elect Joe Biden won the Electoral College, and maybe politics won't be so bad. I'm sure they still will, because it's politics. And this podcast isn't about politics. I'm just talking about a few current events that are happening right now. But let's get into this show. Today on the show, I have a great comedian and musician. His name is Joe Nicola. You might have heard if you listened to the credits, you probably heard his name pop up, because the new stand-up spotlight, or stand-up soundbite bumper he made for me. He's a great musician, and you should go check out his stuff on. He's got a big. He doesn't really have a website, but he uses his Facebook page quite a bit. So go check out Joe Nicola Music for all that, and check out his comedy. We had a great conversation, and nice little treat. He played at the end of the interview or conversation. He played an original song off his latest album, so that's going to be cool. That's what you get to look forward to. Now, before we get to that, some business to do. I've got a virtual show coming up, the Holly Jolly Jamboree, December 18th and 19th. I've got a whole bunch of comedians from across the country. It is a virtual show. You can get tickets at my website, danbublitz.com, or you can find it on Eventbrite. It's Dan Bublitz's Holly Jolly Jamboree. And like I said, I've got comedians from all over. Nick Hoff, Wendy Mayberry, all kinds of comics that have actually been on this podcast. I could have almost called it the Art of Bombing Holly Jolly Jamboree, because a lot of the comics that are on the shows have been on this podcast. There's a few on there, though, that are on the show this weekend that have not been on the podcast, so it's a nice little mix. And both shows, they're two different lineups, so you could go to both of the shows and see different comics. The only thing that's going to be common between the two shows is me. I'll be on both of them, because I'm hosting them, but it's going to be a good time. Couple quick things. I want to do a shout out to Lee Bruns, friend of the show, great comic. He's actually on the shows this weekend as well. He made me a cool nightlight with the Art of Bombing logo, and I just got it in the mail the other day, and it's in the studio. It has found its home in the studio, and I just want to say thanks, Lee. That was very sweet of you. It's a cool little thing. I posted some pictures on it. You can see that on the Facebook page if you want. And let's see, we've got the Art of Bombing Best of contest, and what that is I'm looking for your guys' input. I want to know what your favorite episodes have been over the last 4 seasons. We just started season 5, and I want to know what your favorite episodes have been for each season, and some other feedback I'd like to know. And you can go to the artofbombing.com/bestof and fill out that form, and everybody that fills out that form is going to be automatically registered for a drawing to win an Art of Bombing t-shirt. So that's pretty cool. You go do it, and you have a chance to win a chance to win a t-shirt, some free swag. You can't beat that. That's pretty awesome. And then, lastly, before we get into this episode, I just started doing some new YouTube clips called Bomb Drops. And what that is going to be little highlights, little clips from the Art of Bombing podcast. So if you want to go watch some of the videos that I record remotely and check out some of the stories, and mostly I think the Bomb Drops are going to be the bombing stories. Some might throw in some other stuff if there's some good comedy tips and things like that. But that's available on our YouTube page, Art of Bombing Podcast YouTube page. Go check that out. You can get through all of that on our website, artofbombingpod.com. All the links to all our other social medias are there. All right, that's enough business today. Let's get into this fantastic conversation with Joe. Enjoy.
And now, it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
So, in case you're wondering, my dad's an Arab and my mom's Jewish, so I just hate myself. Let that one sink in a little bit. I like being Jewish. Lots of famous people were Jewish. The most famous Jew, Jesus. I'm wondering if he had the problems I did growing up and that your family was pressuring you to join the family business. He's like, Ma, I don't want to be a carpenter. I'm on tour now. I've dropped the of Nazareth. People know me. And that was before social media. Like, he performed and word got out. That's awesome. Jews built the pyramids. People don't realize that, which probably means we complain the entire time. You want it how big, Pharaoh? Tell you what, we'll build you 50 10 ones, small ones. We'll take the tips down and look real nice. Yo, Pharaoh, you'll love it.
Oh, man. So, have you... It never fails. As soon as I can be up here for hours in silence, and as soon as I start recording, a motorcycle or something has to go vrooming by. I don't know. Now that I think about it, after, hearing that come through, I'm like, maybe this is not the ideal place to record. Maybe I should move this in a little bit.
It's a lot. I'm more comfortable than in your bathtub last week. So.
Well, hey, man. I mean, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to get that good sound.
Dan Bublitz Jr., I also got to say congratulations. Last we talked, you had not had a dry bar special.
Yes,
so
this is true.
Post-dry bar.
It is post-dry bar. Well, dry bar taping. I still don't have a dry bar comedy special yet because it hasn't come out.
It's in post.
It's in post. It's taped.
But well done.
Thank you.
Well earned.
Thank you. It's definitely the hard work finally paid off a little bit. So that's always good. It's always good, when you devote so much time and energy to something and you see some kind of a reward or return on your investment. That's my fancy marketing talk.
Love it. And I look forward to seeing it when it comes out.
Yeah, I do too. So what I really look forward to the most is watching
seeing all the mean things people on the internet will say. Because that's funny. Some of the comments that people make on some of them videos, just atrocious.
So on the Dry Bar app, they have the tip button.
Yep.
Does that go to you?
Yeah, well, that's what I was told.
Okay.
Because we have to do, you do like at the end of, have you watched the Dry Bar special?
Yeah, I have the app on my phone too.
Yeah, well, I know you got the app, but that doesn't mean you use it. I mean, those are two different things. Like, you know,
I've seen a Dry Bar special.
Okay, well, at the end, I don't know if you watch through the credits. At the end, the comic of that special does like a bumper, which is basically like, hey, if you like my special, now you can tip. So like they do that for like every special basically since they started doing the tip thing. So yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see. It was awesome that I got to do it. I had a good time, and I'm excited for it to come out. And now I'm just thinking about what's next and how I can...
It's Vegas next, right?
Well, no, but I mean, no, long term. I'm not talking... Sure. Vegas is next, yeah, for the World Series of Comedy. But I'm thinking more long term. Like, how do I cash in on the potential exposure from Dry Bar, you know, because their videos, millions of people watch them videos, the clips and stuff when they put them out on their social media platforms. Hopefully, you know, that will drive some people to some of my social media stuff, and then maybe not necessarily to my social media, but to like search out to see what other content I have out there. So I'm thinking about what I got to do to have more content, so it kind of coincides with all that.
That's that business side of your mind
absolutely.
that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
off camera.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It is exactly that. Thinking about how to expand on it, because that's something I know I've talked about on this podcast with other people too. Is a lot of comedians think short term. You know, they think about what this particular spot. They don't think about, well, how does this particular spot get me to the next thing? You know, like you do get a late night set, you know, and then you book it and you get it and you film it and then you're like, oh, I did late night, that was great. But a lot of comedians they're not thinking about, okay, now that I did this, how does this get me to what, you know, the next thing, like maybe a comedy special or this or that or whatever it may be, you know. So been trying to do as much forward thinking as I can.
That's one of the things I admire about you, and that anyone can see. Just, you know, search for you. Look at all this stuff you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. My name comes up a lot in the Google searches, and for good reasons, not the wrong.
Now I want to do it and just see what Google autofills, like what's after your name.
Dan Buble Fugit. What? Dan Bublitz was arrested for stealing Twinkies, and then he escaped. He was cracked out on sugar and just left. I don't know. That's dumb. I should probably edit that out. Yes. But I won't. I don't do a lot of editing unless it's a big technical issue. So yeah, so don't fuck up.
Fair.
That's what we're gonna do. So
thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Hey, you're welcome, Joe. You're welcome. So now that we talked a little bit about that and me. This podcast isn't for me to talk about me. It's for me to talk to my guests about the things that they do and their experiences in comedy and failure and dealing with failure and finding success and all those good things. So let's talk about you now. With the pandemic, so you've been doing comedy for a little while. You are a musician.
Yes,
you were pretty steady with doing musical stuff. Now, since the pandemic and quarantine and things like that, has that picked up a little bit for you on the music side? I mean, because I know some places have opened back up, but with limited capacities and things like that, and I don't know how. Like with comedy, there have been like a lot of the clubs in this area have opened up, yes. You know, taking certain precautions and, you know, limited, you know, reduced capacity, safety precautions, things like that. Has that kind of been the same thing with music?
I think comedy has done it better.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Acme's done a great job. Sisyphus in town has done a great job, and there's still people coming to laugh, and they do a good job with all the protocols. Music, once again, music venues themselves haven't quite opened up.
Oh, okay.
Yet.
Well, yep.
But here's the thing. Taverns and bars for thousands of years are where you would hear music. And guess what? Those are now the go-to places for venues, to where even City Pages, RIP. They're starting to promote just breweries as the new music venue. And so what I was doing up until this month, when it really got cold, I was performing outside mostly.
Oh, okay. So like on a corner in the street, like downtown?
No.
Panhandling for money?
But
or
a lot of venues on the patios that they...
Maybe you're in rougher shape than I thought. No.
It's so warm in here, Dan. Thanks for
I tell you what, if you were gonna like panhandle like as an artist, and you're definitely gonna make more money panhandling as a musician than trying to yell jokes at people. In fact, you're probably just going to make people angry when you try to yell a punchline at them as they're walking by.
That's really good.
You yell a punchline and then you're like, now give me $1. That joke ain't free.
I think you're onto something here. This could be a good web special. Like most musicians,
actually, I'm sorry, you put me on a tangent there. That would actually be a funny sketch. It would be like you'd have like a musician on one side of the corner, rival a comedian corners on the other, rival corners, and like the comedian's getting mad because the musician is getting all the donations and people are just stopping and enjoying the music, and he's like yelling punchlines and people are just like trying to rush away from the comedian.
And the comedian would have to, you got to get right back to the same joke. What's the deal with airline food?
Yeah.
What's the deal?
He's like, doesn't even get to the punchline. Like every time he's just doing the setup for every person that walks by.
That's what it is.
And then finally somebody stops, and then he doesn't have a punchline. They like stop to listen, and then he's got nothing. He's like, "Why don't you tell me? I honestly don't know. I'm just trying to find out. I'm not a comedian. I'm doing market research or something stupid."
And scene. Yes, I love it. That's pretty good.
Oh, God, that would be funny. I think we got a sketch. We're going to write that, because that is pretty funny. But anyway, back to performing on patios of bars.
Bars. Now that that's all moved inside, I have my option. Of course, going to start back up doing streaming, like when we first went into quarantine. Just started that up. And we'll play it by ear. We'll see what's going on.
Okay, so when you say going back to streaming, obviously I know what streaming is, but does that mean like you're working, you're playing from home?
Yep,
playing from home. And the venue's streaming it into their facility, or you're streaming it to whoever?
I'll usually stream it, and then the venue will share the stream on their social media.
Okay, and then within their bar. So like, I guess what I'm saying, like, like a lot of bars and breweries and things, they have TVs.
No,
and
they
stuff
haven't done
set
that,
up,
but they should.
And they have the capabilities. I mean, they do really. They have the capabilities of having the a musician play from home, but still like broadcast it throughout the restaurant, play it over the PA or whatever.
Once again, that business mind of yours.
Yeah, that's where I went. That's what I was thinking.
That's a great... No, I have not seen that yet.
Well,
that's a great idea.
Next time you work with somebody, you might want to mention that. That's
I'll give you a finder's fee.
An idea that they should maybe consider. Now playing Joe Nicola via
television.
Virtuality, via the TV, but exclusively on our TV. At our bar.
That's great.
Yeah, I would definitely mention that, because I'm surprised more, especially with music, you could do that. Like with comedy, it would be harder to do something like that. But with music, you could definitely, play from home, and if they're broadcasting, they could still broadcast on their social media pages, but then also broadcast it within their establishment.
Yes, they could.
As a performance, And they maybe not charge, but they could even do like a donation thing for, you know, and I don't know how that goes. I know, you know, a lot of times with comedy, the free shows are not great because there's usually nobody's getting paid, nobody's collecting money. There's just it ends up being
for the
whatever.
art.
Yeah, it's more for well, that's what we say. But like with music, I know venues are more inclined to pay musicians to play and then not charge covers or whatever. So I could see, and I could see doing that for free, like broadcasting it through the TVs, or, you know, if they wanted to charge a cover, they just do like a donation thing, and it's still the same thing. It's still a concert there, but not there, essentially. I don't know.
I appreciate this free business advice.
Anything I can, we try to be helpful here on the Art of Bombing. That's the idea. I want people to learn and grow and get better at things. So, hey, if this works out, just remember, there's a 15%. No,
that's industry standard. Yeah, no, that's fine. You've earned it.
From here on out, all your gigs, I'm now your manager. I'm not going to do anything other than to give you the advice I did. Everything else is up to you. Just send me that money.
So just like an agent. No.
Exactly. And that's good business. Oh, but okay. So you're getting ready to go back to doing virtual stuff.
Yeah.
How was that before? Because you said go back to, so that implied you did it prior to.
Yeah,
working
when the
patios.
lockdown first went on.
Okay.
When we all canceled our gigs, just went straight to streaming on the internet. Well, it's like what we were talking about off camera before. The difference between music and comedy is you don't need an audience to do well as a musician.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Play your song, get lost in your head. The rest is gravy.
Yep.
So it was easy. Just, have your same bits, have your same intros.
Yep.
What's this song about? Hope you enjoy it. Oh, thanks for joining me today. It's just talking to yourself. But like we were talking about before, with comedy shows now being streamed and online with the delay and, trying to connect with an audience to get them to your side of an issue and to want to laugh, even though, like you said, half a dozen of them are already muted. So
yep,
it's much tougher. And yet you're doing it. Other comedians are doing it. What was that group that you were talking about?
Displaced comedians.
Displaced comedians. Yeah. So, even once again, human spirit bonding together.
Well, it's adaptability. I mean, you have to be able to adapt because, it's any business changes over time because your market changes and the demands of the demands of the customer will change and things like that. Plus you have there's always other factors that can affect a business, and you either adapt or you go under, essentially.
Part one of your 12 DVD sets,
right? Yeah, either adapt or you go bankrupt. No, but that's kind of how it is. That's what I see. I just see people adapting. I see people who are hungry to do comedy, and this is an alternative right now. It's not the best, but also the thing about it too is with comedy side, there have been some paying gigs doing the virtual stuff, but there's not a lot of paid stuff going on virtually. So there's not a lot of people that are making a ton of money doing it. So, and there are a few that are still doing pretty well doing virtual comedy, but then, they have followings and, they can do a virtual show and sell it out or whatever. But, so it's it's good for stage time probably and good for helping a performer grow, but it's not going to be pay all your bills. You know what I mean? It's not. Well, it's not. It can act as a supplement to an income, I think, but I don't think it can be a full income unless you're well known and have a big drawability.
And yet, in times like this, I think that's okay. Just keep the art going.
Oh, for sure. No.
So, hats off to you for doing that. What you did too. virtual shows last night.
Yep,
alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't alone. There was people in the room. You did 2 virtual shows alone. I mean, I was alone in my house. It was so pretentious too. You're like, so you did 2 open mics last night alone? Like you're just totally like making fun of the virtual comedy. You're all like, I think it's great to keep the art alive. You did 2 mics alone. Oh man, that's so funny.
I walked into that one.
You did. You did. You're like, yep. Yeah. I was alone in my house, but there was people in the room. I wasn't just like, I'm gonna turn on my internet and tell jokes to nobody. Because talk about bad experience. I mean, virtual comedy is already awkward. Could you imagine trying to do virtual comedy to nobody? Because at that point, you're just a crazy person yelling jokes at your computer.
Which is surprisingly how a lot of comedians start.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? I mean,
how'd you get your start? I yelled at the computer till it loved me back.
Like one day I decided I wanted to do jokes and I started yelling them at my computer. I mean, I meant to hit the record button so that I could listen back, but I forgot, so I just yelled at the computer. Yeah. That's so funny. God, that's ridiculous. So as far as music goes, we're going to get into like bombing and stuff. I'm just curious, because this is obviously a comedy podcast for the most part, but I have talked to other musicians in the past. So I'm curious, what has been like your worst gig as a musician?
As a musician?
Yeah, as a musician. Or, were you, not necessarily where you bombed, because
it's harder to bomb.
I was going to say, because you don't really bomb as a musician, because the nice thing is like you said, you don't necessarily need the audience attention to do music.
And to do it well.
But there are plenty of horror stories of performances, bad shows. Not because you necessarily were bad, but just other elements.
A recent one this year, it wasn't the worst, but it certainly was a challenge. But no, worst one as a musician, I was playing some kind of conference, so corporate.
Yep.
Good money, of course you do it.
Yep.
And the opening act was a belly dancer.
Yep.
And you know what? I learned in that moment, I'm like, this music does not go well
with that music.
So that was awkward, but a recent gig I played, I won't say where.
No, that's fine.
Great place. Guy was really drunk, and when people are really drunk, either they really like your stuff. Audience guy. Audience guy. Either they really...
sometimes I've plenty of stories where the owner or the manager was the drunk guy ruining the show.
Wow.
So I wanted to clarify that.
I've had hecklers, but they were never the owners.
Okay, well that's good. So drunk guy.
You know the movie? What is it? Harry and the Hendersons.
Well, that's a movie. I don't know if it's the one you're about to.
Yeah, Harry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This guy looked like the Sasquatch in human form.
Okay.
About 6'8".
Damn.
And, of course, gets way close to me and decides to air piano.
Oh, my God.
Not air guitar.
Air piano.
With a guitar player. Just air piano. And I had to go through 3 songs with him just...
Wow.
But I kept my rhythm, I kept my time, I kept the beat, and fortunately it was the owner that was my saving grace and escorted
him away. Wow.
But that was more just enthusiasm.
Oh, okay.
So it didn't you don't really bomb as a musician.
Yeah, no, I know. That
was a hard gig.
Definitely heard of horror shows because in any entertainment there are shady people, but it seems like in music there's way more shady, like producers trying to stiff people and things like that.
Oh,
seems like so
that comes, of course.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But
I have 20 years of that.
But yeah, exactly. But that's what turns some of them into them horror stories where it's like somebody. I had a couple members of a band on here earlier this year, and they were talking about where they they were supposed to do this gig. They had to drive. It was out of the city, so it was like another town, and then they I don't know if I remember, I think the people weren't expecting that kind of music, maybe, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Or the people were enjoying it, but the bar owner didn't. Like, it was almost like he didn't know what he was getting, and basically cut him off early and didn't want to pay and but that shit happens all the time, and so it's terrible, but it's part of the job. It is part of the job, unfortunately. So, but when you have those experiences, those definitely make a show bad. You know what I mean? In a bad experience. But if your worst is some guy being too enthusiastic about your music, that's not too bad.
No,
so you're doing all right.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I've made it.
Let's not get carried away. I mean, you're still doing virtual gigs, so.
I have my own roast special today.
You do, yeah.
I love this.
Yeah, this is. I'm not really a roast guy. I'm not even trying. That's the sad
But
part.
look at you.
I'm killing it with these roasts. Oh man, that's so funny. Well, but that is good. I mean, because like I said, there's a lot of horror stories out there. But now we're going to talk about comedy because that's really what this is. So
yeah.
Let's talk about a time when you bombed in comedy and how long. Just as preference, I usually don't ask this, but when I'm curious, I guess I do. How long have you been doing comedy?
So I seriously doing it after my divorce. So 5 years now.
Okay. So you've been doing it for a while.
I did comedy in high school. I did comedy in college. But like we were talking about earlier.
More dabbling.
But there also wasn't a scene to go to. So I would perform at a variety show or something like that.
Yeah.
So it only was being located in the Twin Cities now with such a vibrant comedy scene. Where
Now, did you come here after your divorce, or were you married when you were here and then
second one?
Second,
I was living here at the time, but now had a lot of time free.
Yeah. But I mean,
I've been here a long time.
Yeah, okay. So you were married with your wife here.
Yes.
And then you got divorced. Okay.
I really hope they don't see this show now. So you talked about your ex the whole time?
No. We're not going to talk about that. I don't care about them. I don't know who they are. They have nothing to do with this. I'm just trying to build a little context because I kind of misunderstood it. From the way you explained it, it made it almost sound like you got divorced and then moved to the cities.
Gotcha.
And then started doing comedy. That's why I was like, wait, were you not living here prior to that? Or were you here and then, yeah. So that's what I was trying to clear up.
You got it.
I was confused. Okay, now we're on that page. All right, good. So you've been doing comedy.
So dabbled for 20, serious for 5.
Okay, there we go.
That's a better way probably to put it.
Perfect. All right, cool. I just I thought that I knew you were new, but I didn't think you were like brand new.
No.
So I just couldn't remember. But all right, so let's hear this one of these shows where you felt like you bombed really bad.
All right. Well, I'm pleased to say I bombed in 4 states now.
Oh,
so
wow.
We are learning and growing.
Yeah, that's
So my first long set, like, hey, private show in Iowa, had to do 40 minutes. I went, okay.
Ooh, geez.
All right. Ready to go.
Okay, so quick question before you get really deep into the story. Sure. Getting booked for the 40 minutes, be honest here, because this is a question that a lot of times people aren't honest with themselves about, and I don't.
Was I ready?
Well, no, that's not the question.
Hell no. Okay.
Because I already know you weren't ready. Because every comic that does this is never ready. We never are. That's all of us. That's part of the process. But I'm curious.
You hear that, kids?
Exactly. I'm curious, at that point, when you accepted this, how much good material do you think you had? time-wise? Like, how much time could you do decent?
Decent 30 minutes at that point.
So that's kind of what I'm curious about, because that happens a lot where as a comedian you get offered a gig to do X amount of time, but you only really have 10 minutes, and you might be asked to do 25, or in your case, you have decent 30 and they want you to do 40. Now you got to
I was fortunate enough that I had enough times to do a 15-minute set, like most people, you travel 8 hours so you can MC a show and get stage time and, rub elbows. And so, I did that for a couple years, and it was always 15 minutes. So
sure.
I know I got a solid, good 30.
Okay.
It was the other 30. It was just like, let's scrap together every single one-liner I have and see what I can stretch this out to. But I made time, but I also bombed, Dan. So, what it was, so I talk about reality, my own life experiences. What more can you do? I am fortunate enough to have an inter-religious upbringing. Okay?
What do you mean inter-religious?
So I am...
I mean, I've heard of people having a religious upbringing, but interreligious?
So my father's from Muslim heritage, my mom's from Jewish heritage, and then I was raised Christian for a bit.
Okay.
And so I talk about all of these different traditions that I grew up with.
I guess when you said interreligious, I was thinking, is that like homeschooling but with religion? Like how, like that's where I was like, I never heard it described that way.
You're kind of close, actually.
Okay. I never heard it described that way. That's why I was like curious.
So I'm in Iowa. And and
that's where we can end this, because you just said that you had 3 different backgrounds of religion, and then I'm in Iowa.
I start talking about that.
Yeah.
And there were 75 people in the room, and the moment I said, and as you know, Jesus grew up Jewish, and the joke was, Jesus grew up Jewish. I wonder if he had the same problems I did about your family wanting you to join the family business. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I mean that. You want to hear more. And, Dan, you can hear the energy getting sucked out of a room.
Was that your opening joke?
No, it was not my opening joke. Thank goodness. No, yeah.
Because that really would have made the next...
We got to hit 40. Here we go.
That would have really made the next 39 and 40 seconds hard.
But I remember... like in the moment, in the lights, actually being kind of afraid and had to go, there's a blizzard out and I have to stay in this town tonight.
Oh.
You need to turn this around right now. And I had tunnel vision, and I came out of it while I was still performing when I got some laughs back. So I think I just turned it to self-deprecating stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you can't get offended at this because this is all on me.
Yeah.
Wasn't trying to be offensive.
But that's the thing. I actually, I just was talking about that on, I saw somebody post it and they wanted feedback or whatever, and I had mentioned that religion and politics, and in 2020, just in general, they're hard topics to do. I mean, you get... only hard. Because people are so sentimental about these topics. Like, you can do funny material about religion or politics or whatever. It's got to be really clever and funny, because people get easily offended when it comes to that kind of stuff.
To where they don't even want to hear where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, oh, religion, I'm done.
Like, my joke is not offensive. It is good, lighthearted.
Yep.
But they weren't ready to hear that, and... No, I was scared. They ended up being a good crowd afterwards, but it was a good learning experience.
Oh, absolutely. What was, do you remember what the private gig was for? Like, what was it for? What was the group? Was it like a holiday party, or?
It was an awesome family get together. / surprise birthday party, and they rented out this theater. Like, it was.
Wow.
It was a great family.
Damn.
But no, for the first moment in my life, I'm like, I am the smallest one in this room. I cannot.
So now my question is...
I cannot defend myself.
You went in there knowing you had a good 30 minutes and you had to come up with another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Was that part of the 30 that you thought was good?
Yes, I did.
Or was that the 10 minutes you made up?
No, that was in my good 30.
Okay.
Because that material killed in town.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And
when
it's
you're
done well at
in
other places
yeah,
as well.
for sure. That's one of them things, too. It really depends on where you're at and the demographics, and like, smaller rural areas, stuff like that isn't going to fly, which you were probably in a smaller rural area because you were in Iowa, obviously. So, I mean, that, it's like as soon as you said, I talk about my life and I was raised, my dad has a Muslim background, my mom's Jewish, and then I was raised a little bit Christian. I'm like, yeah, this ain't going to go well.
A little bit Christian.
Not in Iowa.
And yet in North Dakota, that went over really well.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, it's weird. It's weird how different regions find, different regions look at topics differently. Obviously, like you said, you could do that joke in North Dakota, which is essentially like Iowa but further north. When you think about it, and it does fine. But then you go there, and that's how different the people are.
Have you had a similar experience to where this
I've
state's good?
Oh,
this
yeah,
state,
I've
no.
definitely. Well, no. And I wouldn't say it's the state necessarily,
region,
but definitely regional. I did jokes that, I lived in California for a while, and I had some, I used to do a lot of material that did really good in California. And then I started doing stuff in the Midwest, and some of that material didn't really go good in some of the more conservative Bible thumping kind of, Bible Belt kind of areas, because of the subject matter, I imagine. Also, in retrospect, they weren't good jokes, now that, because I don't do any of them jokes now, but it was I remember I was on a tour with some friends. We had a little comedy troupe called the Distinguished Scoundrels, and we did this big Midwestern tour. We had a bunch of stuff in a couple shows in Texas, and I believe we were in Galveston, and I did some material. And it wasn't super bad, subject matter. I mean, it was a little edgy, and I could feel the crowd pulling away. And I knew at that point that the rest of the jokes that were kind of in that, not my whole set, but just in this next chunk of jokes, this next series of jokes, if they couldn't handle this, they were not going to like any of the rest. And that immediately, and I had, not that I was, full of experience or whatever, but I still had plenty of material. Not good material, but plenty of material to where I knew, okay, I can't do these jokes. I got to just cut this all out, and I got to pull some other material that I wasn't planning on doing tonight to fill this gap. And that's what I did. I made, in the middle of my set, I read the audience, and I was like, well, we got to do a change, And I didn't have, the best set that night, but I did okay. I still recovered, and it wasn't, it was a fine set. But had I continued and decided, had I been a comedian that didn't have any extra material and was like, well, they don't like this, I got to keep going because this is all I got, I probably would have bombed. It probably would have been a terrible show for me.
I think it was year 2 that I was really hitting the mics hard, that I had my worst set ever. And I think a lot of comedians, when they're first starting out, you're trying to find your voice, you're trying to find your angle.
Absolutely.
Lots of people are funny. If you're funny in life, that does not mean you're going to be funny on stage.
Yeah. I mean, and to the opposite of that. Sometimes you're funny on stage and not funny in life. I mean, that's the sad clown, syndrome, essentially. Yeah.
And you're right. And for me, I was going at it to where I'm right, you're wrong, I'm smart, you're stupid, here's what I think is stupid.
Yeah, arrogance.
And I recorded it on my phone, and people don't realize this. When audiences don't laugh, it makes a sound. And only we hear it, but it is so horrible. It is so painful. And in listening to it, I was bombing so bad, I actually said to myself, it's okay. Like, I was so sad and scared, my subconscious decided to verbalize, you're going to be okay. And it was so bad. Dan, I stopped doing comedy for 6 months. That's how bad it was. And then, of course, you walk off the stage, and you had to go through the crowd to leave.
Mm-hmm.
There was no side exit.
Oh, man. So... you recorded it and you said you listened back to it. When you listened back, could you tell that it was like, how long did it take for you to realize that it wasn't really the crowd?
When the first joke didn't get a laugh.
But I mean, where you realized it was kind of your arrogance, where you were like,
it was only after the fact.
Yeah.
It was so what it was. I'm like, why didn't this go well?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. And I stopped for 6 months, but I went to a mic every single week, at least one, and just as an audience member.
Okay.
And just to understand who is getting jokes and who is getting laughs and why. And for me, it was just kind of, all right, Max Eastman wrote this book in the 40s called The Enjoyment of Laughter. And it's talking about you're only funny when they know you're in fun, more or less, when you know you're having a good time and you're not taking yourself seriously.
Yep. No, that's true.
And that was kind of like a key thing for me. I'm like, okay, so you can still do the same jokes. Like, for example, I had a joke about service animals. When someone would get a Chihuahua instead of a Golden Retriever. Like, okay, it's a funny little premise, but I would go with, I think people that get Chihuahuas are so stupid, Where instead,
so you become almost mean and insulting.
To where, no, now I do the same joke. I went, service animal, I love them. Here's why I love them. And then you just do the same joke, same perspective, but you're going, no, I like this. This
that's
great.
interesting that you kind of started, doing it that way. I was listening to another podcast. I was listening to We're Having a Good Time with Dusty Slay. That's his podcast, and he does a lot of his podcast is more about stories about his life or whatever. But once in a while, he does some tips and talks about comedy. He takes emails and stuff, and he was talking about that exact thing. That sometimes it's how you say it, in the sense that instead of saying, I don't like service animals, they're dumb. Instead, you say, I love service animals because blah, 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 whatever. And it changes the whole, like you said, the whole demeanor of the joke. It goes from you being a mean, grumpy comic to, this is why I love them. And then, but that it's still the same punchline, which is, essentially you're still getting your view out, but like you said, it's more lighthearted.
And that was a game changer for me. Okay, I don't have to change my jokes. I don't have to change my voice. I just have to change my feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Just walking up going like, I'm feeling good. It's so good to be here. Instead of just like, you're bothering me, listen to all my knowledge and thoughts.
Yeah, right? I am the greatest. And that happens a lot with comedians, especially comedians that write really smart jokes. Because you definitely see that in comedy where arrogance can get the best of a comic, where, they write a really good joke, but they don't want to dumb it down. And I get it. It's your baby, but sometimes you can't get. But then when you tell it the same time every time and it doesn't get a laugh from every audience, you can't get mad, because not all audiences are going to be smart and as smart. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes there are jokes that are just too smart for every audience.
Too cerebral, too much of a thinker.
Yeah, too much of a thinker, exactly. I guess not necessarily too smart, but definitely too much of a thinker, where people don't want to put that much effort into thinking about that. That's why a lot of times when you see a comedian do a joke that's really clever, they get nothing. And then there's that delay. Then all of a sudden people are like, oh, ha, 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 like way late, because it's like it really had to sink in.
In a way that, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this. The audience, comedy audiences, kind of dictate what jokes you can tell and how you can tell them, to where you almost have to dumb down.
Well, a little
your
bit.
premise, because half the time the audience is drinking. You know? Like, stick with me, people.
Yeah. Drinking, and then, people, especially nowadays with, having everything, that instant gratification and having everything right at our fingertips, people have short attention spans. They don't want to they're not coming to a comedy show to think. I mean, obviously some of the best comedians are provocative and they make people think, but a general audience just wants to go be distracted from life. They don't want to have to put it's basically, dance clown dance. You know what I mean? Like, entertain me. It's
like the Joker. I mean, why is he in the deck? Like, to entertain, the royalty.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of how it is. I mean, and you see that too, like I said, with arrogance, like, it can really get in the way.
And yet I think you do need it.
You do. To an extent,
it is an ingredient.
It's one of them things where I guess I don't think you need arrogance. You need confidence, and I feel like a lot of performers get the two confused.
Okay, that's really good.
Their confidence, they're not really confident. They're just arrogant. And where. You got to definitely have your confidence, because if you're not confident on stage, the audience will feel that. But I guess you could call it overconfidence, but to me, it's just more arrogance, where they're like, my joke's the best. I don't care what anybody says. I wrote it. If you don't laugh at it, you're just dumb audience.
And some comedians, they do that.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. I've seen it. Like, this isn't like a made up thing. This is something that you see on a regular basis. And that's why I feel like it's more of arrogance versus confidence issue to me. In that ingredient, where having the confidence is an important ingredient, I wouldn't necessarily agree that being arrogant is, because, I mean, at the end of the day, how many arrogant people that rub you the right way? You know what I mean? I mean the people that are arrogant.
I'm still
are
at
usually,
0. I'm counting. Yeah.
I know. That's my thing. Like, and so you think about that when you apply that to comedy and performing. I mean, if you're super arrogant performer, and maybe it's part of your character, and it works for a comic, but that ain't going to be every comic. You know what I mean? Like, that's another thing. Is it an act, or is it a real thing? Because some comics, it's not an act. They're really that arrogant, and it's only when you're in the scene do you realize, like, not an act. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it ends up being too, like I said, because when people are arrogant, then they kind of come off as an asshole. And when you're an asshole on stage, if you're not doing it in a comical way, people aren't going to laugh at that. They're not going to like you, because it takes away from your likability. And one of the most important things with comedy is having likability.
Which, you saying that reminds me of a time I bombed in North Dakota. It was a heckler situation. It was the worst heckler I have ever dealt with. I believe it was their first comedy show ever. Mm-hmm. It might have been the first time they were in a crowd of people. I can't say. And also, alcohol was definitely involved. But it was a running commentary the entire show for everything I said, and for every other comedian on the bill that night. I was emceeing. And, you walk out, like, hey, remember, no cell phones, blah, 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 exits are that way. You guys ready to have a good time? Let's warm them up. And first time I'm like, well, I got some great jokes here, you should let the other people, they paid to be here. Little clap, little murmur, but there was no security. They weren't taking the guy out. And he was in the front row. You can only, with the lights, you can only see the first 2 rows, front and center.
Of course.
And he was having a great time, but just did not understand. And isn't that funny? People don't understand. There is a decorum and a way to behave at a comedy show.
Yeah.
Like, there's an exchange.
That's exactly it. There's
and when
an
it's
exchange.
broken, it doesn't work for anyone else there.
Nope.
I got angry, and I yelled at him. I stopped my set. Yeah, at this point, I realized, nope, I have to be in fun. I'm happy-go-lucky, great to be here. And I went, dude, shut the fuck up. And it was the exact silence from the entire audience.
Yep.
And I went, okay, I just got angry now.
Yep.
How do I step back and go, what's the deal? Like,
Yeah,
and you know what?
exactly.
I couldn't do it.
Yep,
It didn't work.
Tough to come back from. I mean,
And I didn't come back from it.
well, yeah. I mean, and not many comics do when they get angry like that. I mean, because then, because that's the thing too, like dealing with hecklers, like, especially how the heckler heckles, like what kind of heckle it is, because there's different kinds of hecklers, There's the heckler that's having a good time and they just, for whatever reason, can't control themselves and have to repeat what you said or do a ha, or like, oh, yeah, that kind of thing where it's really annoying, but they're enjoying the show. They're not trying to be a distraction or whatever. So,
Right.
like, but then there, then there's other ones that, like you said, they don't know how to be at a comedy show, but how you handle it, if you don't handle it gracefully, you do have to handle it in a graceful way to where you keep the rest of the audience on your side. Because when they start heckling, the rest of the audience is annoyed. Like they're like, oh man, this person is being annoying. But as soon as you're mean to that person, then they're on the same team. Because then it's like, oh wait a minute, now you're coming after us.
That's insightful.
You know what I mean? So it's like now it becomes. Now you're against the whole audience, because you didn't handle. You got to keep the heckler. You got to keep the audience against the heckler. The audience has got to be on your side when you take down a heckler. Like when you look at, because there's a lot of videos, with comics destroying hecklers and things like that. And you watch these, if you ever watch any of these videos. The ones where they get them good, they have the audience on their side. The rest of the audience, because the rest of the audience is annoyed too.
Do you have a go-to? Because it's a workplace hazard, the heckler in comedy. It's to be expected.
I really don't. I don't. I'm not really good necessarily at handling hecklers. Like, I don't like hecklers. I don't try to make it a funny thing so, you can get a video or whatever out of it. Like, that's not if I get a heckler, I'm trying to shut them down as quick as possible and as polite as possible. Like, I don't want...
And keep your rhythm and to
try to keep
be
my
likable.
rhythm. And, yeah, like, I'm basically, and it also depends on where I'm at in the show. What are my responsibilities? Because as a performer on a show, a show is a collective effort. It's not just about the headliner. It's not just about the MC. It's not just about the feature. It's about the whole show. You want a good quality show. It's not about trying to do better than each other. I mean, there's always that competitive, competitiveness there, I suppose. But really, it's about putting on a good show. So when that audience leaves, they're like, that was the best show I ever saw. Not they were like, well, that one guy was good. Everybody else was kind of, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's about. So, like, where you're at on the show, on the lineup, determines, kind of that, too. So, like, as an MC, my job is to try to make them behave, but also be very polite about it. Because as the MC, you are a representative of the club, essentially. Like, that position kind of says you work at that comedy club. You are the face of their club that weekend. So you really have to, as like an MC, you really have to be more graceful with it and try to keep it, nice. And then, as the feature or headliner, you have a little more liberties because you're the show, And especially the headliner. The headliner can do whatever they want, Like, I had a situation just a couple weeks ago where I was the MC/feature, and because it was just a two-person show, and it got real crazy. Like, I do some material that's not they had to be really hammered. That's what a lot of it was. A late show. Usually when you have a late show, people go pre-gaming, come to this late show, they're already drunk when they get there. And I think that had a lot to do with it because they were a wild crowd. Like I have a joke about my, sweater dress joke thing that I do. And as soon as I started doing it, just talking about just doing the setup, people in the audience started yelling like, "Prove it!" And then take it off. And I was like, all right, come on, calm down, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants this, whatever. Try to finally get to the joke, to the punchline of the joke. And then people are like, oh, take it off, blah, blah, blah. Prove it. I'm like, I can't do that. This is not my show. This ain't a strip club, whatever. Try to handle it gracefully. And in that
was
situation,
a good cover. I like
that situation, it wasn't just one specific person. It was several people from the audience. I mean, there
different tables?
Different tables. I mean, there was one particular table that was worse than the rest because they were sitting closer to the stage, And finally, I just stopped my set and I was like, hey, remember at the beginning of the show when I said don't heckle the comics? You don't want to heckle the comics. And then by that time, one of the managers came by and was like, hey, you guys got to cut back or you're going to be asked to leave. Basically gave them a warning, right? Well, then I get done. I bring up the headliner, and I'd already watched the headliner a couple times, so and after that set, because it was probably my roughest set of the weekend, because it was exhausting, because I was trying to deal with that and still try to do my material, and very, very distracting.
And people don't realize how much mental effort is.
Oh, absolutely. And especially
you are undergoing in that moment.
And you're the host, too. You have all the host responsibilities and then, doing that. And so, yeah, it's very exhausting.
And
so
be funny. Dance monkey.
Exactly. I was very, very exhausted, so I was just sitting out in the bar. And then, all of a sudden, one of the groups, a couple from one of the groups, came out with the manager. Basically, the headliner had them thrown out because they were still not behaving. He had seen what I was going through up there, and finally he tried to be nice about it and try to be playful with them, tell them, hey, you guys gotta be quiet, and they kept interrupting or whatever, and finally he was like, all right, you guys gotta go. Can you guys and that's what happens. I mean, it's hard sometimes to deal with those situations.
As far as hecklers go, in your experience, is there a difference when the venue is just serving beer versus they have liquor?
I think so. Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, not just in heckling, but I think in audiences in general, I think...
Which would you prefer they have? I think liquor makes you mean.
I guess I don't really have a preference. I just know that to me, it seems like when there's liquor, people are more relaxed and laid back than venues that just serve beer and wine, because not everybody wants to drink beer and wine, and that having liquor gives them more options. So
that's a good point.
If they want if they want to have a mixed drink or a cocktail, they have that option. So I feel like you get a lighter, looser crowd when you have liquor.
Which can play to your advantage.
But it can also play to your disadvantage.
Yep.
It can go either way. I mean, on that spectrum. But I guess I would prefer, I don't necessarily have a preference, but that's just an observation.
Which is why you did a dry bar special.
Yeah, exactly. There was no alcohol.
You're that kind of a pro.
Wow, way to bring it back. Look at you. Full circle.
Check out
here.
the special now.
Yeah. Well, it won't be out yet. You just wait for it. It'll be out eventually. It'll be out eventually. Now, you already talked about, I usually ask how comics deal with the bumming of bombing or how long that lasts for a person, but you kind of talked about it already with the fact that you bombed so hard you quit for 6 months. So sometimes it obviously...
But I showed up the next week as an audience member.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And what's great about comedy is it's always a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
If you work on it and try it again differently, they're fine with that, as long as you're working.
Yeah.
And also, it doesn't kill you.
No, that's funny that you mentioned that, because that's like one of one of the greatest things
Yes.
that I've kind of, over the years, I feel like I've learned, because I used to have really bad stage fright. Like, doing comedy wasn't just about fulfilling that, it was also about overcoming the fear of public speaking and things like that. But
Which is like the number one fear for
humans.
most humans.
Yep,
So.
exactly.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest takeaways is, like, the worst that can happen is nobody's going to laugh, and I'm going to bomb, but then I'm going to get off stage, and I'm going to go home, I'm going to go to bed, and chances are I'm going to wake up the next day. It's not going to kill me.
And it does give you that kind of bulletproof mentality. Like, it is instant rejection when you bomb. Like,
Oh, yeah, well, just
we
like,
don't like you
Yep.
or anything you stand for or think about.
just like the instant gratification when you do get laughter.
Which is
The
why you
very
keep
opposite.
going back to it. But once you realize, I'll be okay. It hurts.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like one of the best like things that a performer can learn is, I feel like, is that it'll be okay when you do bad, because that really does give you the power to feel like you're bulletproof. Not in the sense that you're really bulletproof, but when it comes to performing, then it's like, well, I don't.
And at least for me,
If I don't do well, whatever.
And it bleeds off into your everyday life, too. You
Yeah.
know, just
Oh,
life
absolutely.
disappointments, like, I can handle this.
Yeah, it changes your perspective on how
Yeah.
you see it. Yeah, absolutely, and how you can handle the failure, essentially, which is what this is all about.
Which is all
handling
about.
failure.
Handling failure.
failure. What you do with it, how you use failure to find that success. Now look at us doing all these full circles, going around.
Dan
going
Bublis
around.
Jr.
And you talked a little bit about when you told your story about how you with that particular set, how you kind of analyzed it, went back and was listening to it, and then watching other performers. But what else do you do when you have a bad set or even a good set to analyze and try to improve your set or your performance? And maybe even in music, what do you do?
Music, well,
I mean, obviously
comedy's
rehearse,
tougher
but-
than music. Comedy is completely different than
absolutely.
music in that you can have a great set, great timing, great rhythm, audiences with you. And we have both seen terrific comedians not do well
Yep.
with the same set that we know is good.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's probably the toughest thing, is just how do you work on this? Is, okay, this is my tight 5, this is my tight 10, and then it's not that tight, depending on the audience.
Yep.
So how do you come back from that? I'm still figuring it out, but it's always, I don't think you can say this is always going to work. And what helps is you have to connect with your audience somehow. And it's even when they don't either get a joke or it is too cerebral and it's a thinker for them, if they already are with you, they'll forgive that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And they're just like,
so do you listen back to your sets then
Always.
and kind of look for
Record everything.
and then try to like figure out where you lost them? Like what did you say?
I
How
do. It
did you say
becomes
it?
it's obsessive compulsive, which I
Yep.
think you need a little bit of
Yeah, I think a
to
little
do
bit.
this. But it's a craft that only you can do and only you can fix.
Yep.
So yeah, does it drive me mad? Yes, it does. To where I want to be perfect, but I have yet to see
Yeah, well, that's
anything
not gonna
perfect come
happen.
out of me. So.
We already determined that earlier on the podcast. We're just gonna keep doing circles, this full circle stuff here. The subtitle of this episode might have to be "Joe Gets Burned."
I'm having a really good time, by the way. Thank you for having me on the show.
All right, we're gonna get wrapped up. So do some of this other stuff that I like to do, the funner stuff. Do you have a pre-show ritual or tradition?
Do I have a pre-show ritual or tradition?
Yeah.
Yes, I have to lie to myself that I'm just as funny as everyone else up there.
That's a good pep
And
talk.
I actually say that out loud.
That's good. It's funny. I've been thinking about that. And in fact, when I was in Utah filming the Dry Bar Comedy Special, like I had to remind myself, I had to, I don't think I said it out loud, but I definitely kept thinking about it in my head where I was like, you deserve to be here. You deserve to be here. You earned this. You worked for this.
Hell
You're just
yeah.
as funny. You're just as deserving as everybody else that has stepped on this stage. Like, I had to keep reminding myself that. So it's a good thing to, it's a good, I wouldn't call it a lie as much as a good pep talk and a reassurance,
That's
that makes
a more
sense.
kind approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. less self-deprecating, which is
Yeah,
why we
exactly.
get into comedy.
Yeah, right. Now, do you have a favorite gig that you've done? Or best gig? What's your best or favorite gig?
With comedy, best gig. I was in the funniest person in Minneapolis contest last year at Sisyphus.
Okay.
So Acme does another one. That
Yep.
one's fantastic.
Yep.
Actually, no, both of those were great because I did both of those performances. And yeah, at Acme, I have always wanted to make someone cry with laughter from my set because I think, like, you can't fake that. And I remember I was on stage and stage left, so to my left, front row, I see a woman, like, drying her eyes with laughter. And I remember, like, I almost lost, like, my train of thought. I went, and blah, 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 huh? Oh, it's... And that was just the affirmation
Yep.
of, you're doing this, Just, it's a craft, it's a skill set. People don't realize that. There's timing, there's rhythm, there's perspective, there's stage presence, there's speaking. And to have all of those things come together to where it works and you can see that. So yeah, I still think about that to this day.
Excellent. That's awesome.
Otherwise,
that's
I had I don't try to riff too much off my material. I'd love to do crowd work. That would be something I'm working towards. But yeah, there was one gig to where, I don't know, someone laughed at something, and sometimes, like, some person their laughter will trail, and then that starts the
Yep.
audience laughing. So they're not even laughing at you anymore.
Nope, they're laughing.
They're laughing at
yeah,
what this
yep.
happened. And that just allowed me to riff, and I had like 3 jokes just boom, boom, boom. To where, like, I had to step back from the mic because, like, it was feeding back in the monitors just from the audience laughter. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yep.
You are in the zone.
Yep.
Those 2 were the best
Oh, that's
so
fantastic.
far. How about you?
Oh man, I have too many.
You have
I
too
mean,
many, I'm
too
sure.
many like good experiences. Like, I mean, I have plenty of bad too. But right now, I mean, obviously, I just filmed the Dry Bar comedy special, so that's right now. That's probably my favorite gig that I've done since I started comedy. I mean, there was one other show that I guess that won't top that, and that was on that tour I was talking about earlier with my friends. We did a show in my hometown, and what we were doing is, like, we were going to different areas and we were rotating who headlined and who, opened or whatever. And in my hometown, I headlined the show. And after the show, my dad, because my dad was there, he told me he was proud of me. And so that was like, that will always be my highest accolade in comedy, is having my dad come up after watching me perform.
And get to see you perform.
Yeah, but in telling me that he was proud of me, because...
That's every son's dream.
Yeah, right? It really is. I mean, because a lot of it, too, like, my dad and I, as a kid, I didn't get along very well with my dad.
Sure.
I think that's true with most kids and parents or whatever.
Yeah.
But he didn't... he was there working and doing his thing, but we didn't necessarily have an active role in my life or whatever. But we've always, as we've gotten older, we've gotten closer. But the nice thing about it was also the fact that at 32, I told my dad that I'm quitting my job and moving to California to pursue comedy. And while he's always been very supportive and my biggest, basically my biggest fan, obviously he's a parent. He was like, you know what?
Yeah.
You're an adult. You can do what you want. I think it's, good that you're trying to chase your dream, but you got a good job, so it's kind of dumb that you're going to give that all up. Basically was real with me, but he wasn't going to stop me. He was still encouraging us in a sense. So then to come back and then headline, several years later and then have him say that, that's going to be
that's
mine.
the ultimate.
That's the ultimate.
That is the ultimate.
Nothing will ever top that moment. So, but Dry Bar's like right under it.
I gotta ask, was Dry Bar completely dry even in the green room?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so all the comedians you had to go.
I mean, I suppose you could have went to a bar across the street and had a drink. I don't think they would have not let you perform if you had a drink. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about drinking and alcohol and comedy. Because,
well, now I feel bad.
Because those. Well, no, I'm just saying because those aren't factors to make a good show. A lot of people think you need to have alcohol to find comedy funny, but how many times do you watch a comedy special at home? You're not drinking, and you laugh at it. You know what I mean? So, like, alcohol isn't a key ingredient in comedy. Definitely helps loosen people up and can definitely help, like you said, intensify it and make it a better show, but it can have the opposite effect, too.
Absolutely.
You know, most horror shows in comedy start with there was a drunk guy or a drunk person in the audience. So there you go.
There's no other way. Yeah, that's the only way it starts. Like,
yeah,
there's a very sober, competent person that had some thoughts.
Exactly.
Like, never.
Exactly. Well, sometimes I feel like that might happen, but that's when comics, I think, get political.
True.
Then that can happen. But yeah, most of those horror stories start with a drunk person. So yeah, so you don't need alcohol.
Lesson learned, kids.
And obviously it's been working. Dry Bar Comedy has been around for a little while now, and they're one of the most successful, clean comedy content providers out there. So they obviously know what they're doing. So and their shows, when they do these live tapings, almost always sell out. So people don't need alcohol to go have a good time and laugh at a comedy show.
Are the rules simple? Don't swear. Don't talk about sex.
Is
that about it?
No, I mean, it's a little more than that. I mean, it's not. It's basically TV clean, but a little cleaner than TV clean.
Family show.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah.
Well, no, because
it's like it's basically a hybrid between PG and PG-13 and almost like doing a Christian comedy. Not quite Christian. Not all the way PG-13. Like there's
it's PG-12.
It's
basically.
Because of the air. They say there's clean comedy. There's Christian comedy, clean comedy, and then there's Provo clean, and because that's where they film is Provo, Utah. So there are certain things, and they tell you can do what you want. Obviously, no swearing. It does have to be clean or whatever. But they're like, you can take the risks that you want, but the audience may not respond because this is just how it is, or whatever,
Sure.
And one thing I noticed, I did a joke on I think it was the second show when I did it. I did it on both shows, but on the second show, I noticed when I brought up divorce, the crowd kind of was like,
really?
A little bit. You know what I mean? So, certain things, certain topics or whatever, I mean, they're going to tense up on just because of the region and the area and their upbringing and their religious beliefs and things like that.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, and it goes back full circle again to when we're talking about regional comedy, regional, how comedy, does in different regions. You can have the same joke and it not do well everywhere. But, I mean, ideally, you want all your jokes to do good everywhere. So.
Ideally, I haven't figured out that formula.
Yeah, me either. All right, the last thing we're going to do is called Pick a Number. You're going to pick a number between 1 and 20. I'm going to ask you a corresponding question.
I will take 15, Dan.
15. Oh, this is a new one. I like this. What is your favorite local hangout?
Yeah. Favorite local hangout. I really like Sisyphus Brewing.
Okay. It doesn't have to be comedy.
I know, but they have a comedy club.
They do.
But I'm a big reader, and I love dogs. And the bar side, you can bring a book, you can pet a dog, meet someone nice. So that is probably one of my favorite places.
All right. That's actually where we met. That's
true.
That's the first time we met. I don't know. We might have seen each other at other mics or whatever. That's the first time we talked or interacted.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Sisyphus. Yep.
I was very impressed by you.
Oh, shut up now. Quit sucking up. All right. Well, do you have anything that you want to promote? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, the easiest way is find your favorite search provider and just type in my name, Joe Nicola, Nicola. You'll find my music, you'll find my comedy, you'll find out how to reach me.
You have a couple albums out. You just released an album.
I do.
Right?
I just released another acoustic album. Really excited about that. Wonderfully titled Guitar Music Volume 2.
Nice.
Yeah. So no, that I'm really excited about that, and using the COVID time to write some new songs and record and just learn that side of the creativity process.
Fantastic. All right. Well, this is normally where I would say thank you for joining me, but we're going to do a little different because you do have this new album. You're going to play us a song from that album.
You got it.
We're going to go ahead and let you take us out with your song.
You got it. So this is Joe Nicola speaking to you as a musician, not a comedian, but this song, which is not funny, but quite nice, in my opinion. It's called Small Things, and it relates to comedy and life in that it's only after the fact that you see all these little stepping stones that led you to where you are now. And you don't realize that these small things are actually going to lead to really big things. So, Small Things, Joe Nicola, hope you enjoy it.
Beautiful. The Art of Bombing is a Blitzed Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by me, Dan Bublitz Jr. The stand-up spotlight bumper was produced by Joe Nicola Music. The Art of Bombing theme music was written and performed by John Hult. All other music was used under Creative Commons licensing. All stand-up audio clips were used with permission from the comedians. You can help the podcast by subscribing, leaving a 5-star rating, and a review. For previous episodes, merch, blogs, and more, please visit theartofbombingpod.com. And remember, stay safe so you can live to love.